السلام عليكم يعني ما شاء الله الحضور الكريم يعني يثلج الصدر، وإن شاء الله ما أطول عليكم لأن موعد الغداء، فإن شاء الله كلها 9 دقائق بالضبط ونعطيكم فرصة للغداء. I will make my presentation in English, so it's following through in a very good flawless manner. So I hope you enjoy it. I timed myself the last time. It was 9 minutes, so hopefully I stick to that or even less. Before I start my presentation, I enjoyed today's show from Dawood, Miss Amal, and also Ali. And they were all talking about, I think, what the entrepreneur needs to do, what the entrepreneur needs to have in their genes or DNA in order to be a successful one. Also, Dawood was talking about the financial authorities outside, how they help the entrepreneurs to fund them with the money. Ms. Amr was talking about the culture. I think all those factors combined together are very important. But what is really important is the demand and the buying power. So when we look at the environment of businessmen or private sectors of businesswomen as well, so you have a demand where people require things, and you have the other side of supply where people provide the product or the service. Most of the entrepreneurs, I guess, on the table here of the presentations or in the audience, they provide either a service or a product. Now, if you don't have the market for it, I doubt your success. And I think it is very important to know the market. The minute you have the market established for you, you don't have a problem in finance. You don't have a problem in mentoring. I think everybody will help you to succeed. But the market itself is important. So Shell today will join QDP on the stage and show you the experience we had in the last couple of years. And I would like to share with you the journey that we do to support the entrepreneurs and the small and medium enterprises. I will give a little bit of discussion in very few slides, 9 slides, hopefully no more. And I will start giving you an idea about what Shell is and the Pearl GTL. And then after that, I will go through what we do and what is so special about us in the SME space. And then I will leave the floor for some questions. So very quick, Shell in Qatar has so many operations. We have operations with Qatar Gas 4. It's a plant that has 70% of Qatar Petroleum, 30% of Shell. We also have the services of Nakilat. We use it for shipping the products of the plant of the Pearl GTL to the customers around the world. Also, we have partners and ties with Qatar Petroleum International. This is the international lever for Qatar Petroleum for investments outside of Qatar. Also, the Pearl GTL is located in Ras Laffan. It's the biggest plant of gas to liquid in the world. I will share a little bit more information on that. Also, the Qatar Shell Research and Technology Center is based in Doha in the Technology Hub. And this center is actually one of the biggest centers in the world. A little bit on the Pearl GTL. It's so big, it's the biggest in the whole world for gas to liquid. What I want to mention here is only 2 types of informations, just to give you a scale of size. There is so much patents and technology involved in the Pearl GTL. But what is worth to mention is that the amount of concrete used to pour for the Pearl GTL can build 2 Burj Khalifa in Dubai. And the amount of steel being used in the Pearl GTL can build 40 Eiffel Towers. So it's really huge. It's one of the biggest in the world. It's actually the biggest in the world. Also for the Pearl GTL, we are utilizing the offshore platforms to provide the gas into the plant, and we are using Nakilat again to ship the products outside. Now this is what I will say the sourcing process that is very interesting for any SME, any entrepreneur, is how you can understand first the client type of business, how they do the business, how you can become a supplier for any big client, not only Shell, it could be the government, it could be any company around with a big size you want to buy, you want to sell products for. So this is the standard process within Qatar Shell. And I believe also it is the standard process in so many other organizations around in Qatar. Now, usually it starts with the vendor pre-qualification. So what we do is we look at the vendors around, and we look at the entrepreneurs, the SMEs, and we qualify them based on either safety requirements, we qualify them based on compliance to technical specifications, we qualify them based on financial stability or credit. And then after that, when they are qualified, they go to receive an invitation to tender. And that invitation to tender will show in them the requirements of the scope, requirements of the service or the goods that we are going to buy as a client. And then they submit their offers to us. Internally, within Qatar Shell or any other organization, what they do is they look at these offers submitted technically, who is qualified, who is committing to provide the service required or provide the goods that we would like to buy. Whoever is complying technically with it, then commercially gets evaluated. The most competitive bid, technically qualified, is the one who will win and get a contract signed with Shell. This is one of my favorite slides. Now, when we talk SME business, in every conference, in every event, someone define it in a way. Someone look at it and say, how do you do it? Now, SME business for us is a big machine inside Qatar Shell. And this machine is simply to make sure that we really integrate as a big buying company in Qatar with the SME private sector environment. So what we try to do is genuinely give business, give value of money, give contracts signed on paper to small and medium enterprises. Now this is how we do it. Now this is the very, very high level idea of the engine that we implement internally. Now we start usually looking at our business end, the different business units within Qatar Shell. We have the maintenance, we have the engineering, we have the projects, we have the HSE, we have the IT, we have the research and technology. We have so many units within the company. We look into those units and we brainstorm to find what are business opportunities that we can take out of the supply chain and give to small and medium enterprises. Now there are some criteria that we look into that to make it happen. And what we try to do is we start with the things that we don't have it in Qatar as a product or as a service, that we usually import from outside of Qatar. Now I'll give you an example. Personal protective equipments. Now those are safety helmets, safety shoes, gloves, safety goggles, and so on, the coveralls. Now all those safety equipments, we buy it from outside, made either in China or in India or in Europe or in the States. Nobody in Qatar manufactures it. Now that is a shock, that we don't even have our safety equipment made in Qatar. And we have the highest construction rate in the country, in the region, in the world maybe. So what we did is we said there is a gap in manufacturing for the personal protective equipments. We looked at the consumption that we have in Qatar Shell for a year, for 5 years, and we said that is an opportunity that we can offer to the private sector and the SMEs. And the result was very successful. Someone came out of a tender environment and committed to build the factory and the facilities to manufacture PPE. And so on, examples go on that. But this is just an example and to give you an idea and a feel. So we identify the business opportunities in the, inside the company, inside us, and then we look at the technical and commercial assessment for it. So we assess each opportunity technically. Is it viable? Is it doable? is it easy to be done, and we assess it commercially as well. After that, we formulate it into a package that we can offer to the private sector, to SMEs and entrepreneurs. Some of those opportunities, they are actually small in size. We're talking $500,000 USD per year. Some of them, they can actually go up to $2 million per year. It depends on the opportunity that we offer. We try to create a variety of the options that we give to people. And then after we host the event for offering and exposing the opportunities to the market, and we do that jointly with Qatar Development Bank, and I will come to that in a short time to tell you why we are doing it with Qatar Development Bank. We invited to good SMEs and entrepreneurs like yourselves. They come and listen to the technical slides, they come and listen to the commercial slides, and then they say, okay, I'm really interested. It sounds to me like there is a business behind this presentation, and I want to join and participate in the tender. And then they get pre-qualified, and then they get a tender launched, and then they submit their offers technically and commercially. We evaluate it internally within Shell, and then we award to the most competitive, technically approved SME. And then we do a kickoff meeting, and we do an awarding ceremony, and we show the people how it's really done. And when anyone will look at it, will say, well, this is cool, but what really is so distinguished about it? We have taken a risk with someone who doesn't have a facility. We have taken a risk with someone who doesn't have a plant, and he is committed to provide us with a service or a product. And what we have done in return is we have given them a grace period. So let's say I offered the PPE opportunity in the private sector environment for all the businessmen. They like it, they want to manufacture it, and they say, okay, we will sign a contract to manufacture PPE for you. I say, great, how are you gonna do it? They say, we need some time, we need expertise, we need some guidance to do that. So what we have done is we have given people a grace period up to 18 months. Now this grace period up to 18 months to help the SMEs to build their factory, to obtain the permits, to obtain the land, to obtain the quotations, the equipments, to obtain the loans from the banks, whatever is new tools and needs they need to provide the requirements of the contract. 18-month duration. So that's a very distinguished from any other SME supporting business. Qatar Development Bank. So we offer as Shell the business opportunities to the private sector, to the SMEs, to the entrepreneurs, exactly as Amal said, and Dawood said, and Ali. We need to give the SMEs or the entrepreneurs the money. Not only the money, I think they also need the consultation and the guidance on how to make sure this is a feasible opportunity and a profitable or not. In the end of the day, the SMEs would like to make money in something they like and something they enjoy. So Qatar Development Bank comes and gives the loans required, and they have different schemes and different programs for loaning people money. And also they have the advisory support, and that advisory support is not only by having a workshop where they tell you how it's done, but actually they give you support in the feasibility studies where they sponsor 75% of the cost of that feasibility study. So Qatar Development Bank is not only a funding authority, it's also an advisory supporting authority. And what I like about Qatar Development Bank is that they are different from the other banks and the other authorities in the country. They have access to the SMEs. They know the local companies and the local businessmen who would like really to do success and take loans for a good business. So this is why we work with them. Now, just not to take so much time, I show you some examples of what local companies we have awarded in 2013. And in the bottom left, you see here the PPE. We also have some opportunities not relevant to the oil and gas industry. Qatar Shell is a GTL, is a gas to liquid plant. We have operations related to oil and gas. We have operations that are supporting to the oil and gas, like translation services, transport, logistics, and so on. In 2014, 5 SME contracts, and actually small contracts, not so big in value. So you have the one in the middle is the one that I like exciting. It's manufacturing of steel drums. So in Qatar Shell, we consume a lot of steel drums, open steel drums, like the ones you see in Waqoud petrol station for oil. And we require big quantities of those all the time. So who manufactures it in the country? No one. So we asked someone to manufacture it, and actually we found one and get awarded. Pre-qualification. A lot of people ask that question. I actually sometimes ask myself the question, well, how do you really define it? Well, I will tell you, pre-qualification for SMEs definition depends from one country to another. For us here in Qatar Shell, with Qatar Development Bank, we have defined SMEs under 3 criteria. First criteria, we need the SME to have at least 51% Qatari partner. We need to have the operations and the head office, the services, or the factory, or the operations to be in Qatar. So not someone having a plant overseas, having an office here in Qatar and would like to use the SME program. So we need to see actually the facilities and the operations in Qatar. This is how we achieve made in Qatar, serviced in Qatar. Third one, which is important, annual turnover of an SME. Well, how do we say it's a big company or a small company? An SME needs to have an annual turnover below 100 million Qatari riyal. Some people may debate it's a little bit big, but I think that's a QDP question to answer. Oops. All right, now there is another thing that is called the Shell Qualification System, SQS. Now simply for any vendor around the world, for any Shell affiliate around the world, Shell Global, all of Shell around the planet, they are using SQS, Shell Qualification System. Simply, what it is, it's a tool online that we use to ensure the vendor is qualified to the requirements of registration that we have in the company to become supplier of choice as a vendor. Now, the first stage is a very simple one. It's about legal documentation, just to make sure that this company is not a fraud and it is a company legally registered in the country. Second stage, third stage, and so on, goes as it is complex, it goes with the service or the goods that we utilize. The last one, which I find very important, and we never compromise that within Qatar Shell. I haven't seen it compromised anywhere in Shell. The health, safety, security, and environment standards. So all the SMEs, all the companies that we deal with in Qatar, we require them to adhere to the safety standards. Now, we don't want to have only a safe operations in Qatar Shell, but we would like also to have a safe operations for the people working with Shell. Now, in the end of the day, our safety is more important than the cash we generate. We also have general requirements, and those general requirements depends whether it is for goods like steel drums, equipments, gaskets, bolts. It depends if it is for services. Now, for goods, just for the general information, we have something called the MESC and something called the TAMAP. And those are material standards and manufacturer products standards. When it comes to each business opportunity, it gets defined with it, and it is not something that is complex or complicated. It is a straightforward standard. With this slide, I will end the presentation, and hopefully I didn't take too much. And this slide will just highlight a little bit on the terms commercially that usually any operating company or any client would offer. Now, Qatar Shell is one of the most restricted companies in terms of their terms and conditions in the market. Very tight, but it's straightforward and it's not impossible or complex. Now, what we do here is we require companies to deal with us, or SMEs, to comply with the government regulations, to have a very good, let's say, technical capability or financial health, 1 year old at least. Usually the opportunities that we offer with Qatar Development Bank, they are competitive type of environment. So we don't go in a matchmaking exercise. What we do is we look at the business opportunity and we offer it in a tender workshop, and people who are interested will participate in it, and then the best offer technically approved wins it. So it's a competitive environment. It's not a single source. It's not what I call a matchmaking. We like this guy can do it, and then they make a contract. No, it doesn't work that way. It's a competitive tender environment to give a fair, equal chance to all the SMEs available in the private sector. Now, the minute the tender starts, as it says here on the second bullet, as a competitive tender, no negotiations are envisaged. And in the last point, it says clarification during the tender will be possible. So the difference is clarification. We clarify with the SME. The SME will clarify with us the scope, and no negotiations. So if an SME submits his offer, we don't ask him to come and reduce your offer or revise it again. It's a fair chance. It's an equal, open table, transparent, no negotiations. With that, I'd like to thank you, and I would like to ask from the SMEs and the companies and the businessmen in the present, in this lovely room, to either register yourself in the table outside, or leave your business card with the organizers, or send us an email to qatarshellvendors@shell.com. Now, if you send an email to this email, make sure you put your company profile or what you do. Even if we don't have a business opportunity dedicated with the Qatar Development Workshop event, if there is a service that we find someone unique about it, providing a product that is made in Qatar, we will take this on the side and look into it and see if we can utilize the service or the goods. And with that, I would like to thank you very much, and I wish you all the success in your career. Thank you. I don't think if there is any questions or answers. Got one question in the back.
Thank you for the insights. I want to ask, is this approach for your approach in Shell, is it similar, or we can call it, you are trying, or such approach can be or rise through it intrapreneurs? We did not use this term intrapreneur in this forum. So intrapreneur is like an entrepreneur who works within an organization to develop a new job, project, product, service, whatever. So is it similar? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. Well, we had something within Qatar Shell that is called Intralaqa, and this program was similar to the Entrepreneurial, and Intralaqa was meant actually to help people with their ideas, but it was more wide across the industry for bakeries, cafes, restaurants, and supermarkets, and anything not only related to the oil and gas, but also related to the business outside. For some reason, I would go back to Ali's presentation when he said, we are fortunate to be living in this region and maybe not so much blessed, because most of the people living in this part of the world have the luxury of comfort. And that gives very little motivation for people to start their own business. And starting your business needs to have a very strong motivation or a very strong drive. And I came across this note from Life Bulb. I don't know if if anybody knows about it, from Facebook, Life Bulb. And they were saying, create a vision that makes you jump out of bed when you wake up in the morning. Now, how many entrepreneurs or how many SMEs around jump out of bed to fulfill what they want to do in the morning? The driver should not be only profit. It should be the success of passion on something that you really like and you really love to do, something that inspires you. If it is only for profit, no matter what program you put in Talaqa or anything that pushes the entrepreneurs to succeed, I doubt it. It needs to be self-energized. I hope I answer your question. You're welcome. Any more questions?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Sami.
Yes.
I want to ask something. You said you sign contract, then you give them a grace period, correct?
Yes.
But how will you sign a contract before you take the technical tender from them? How will you know their technical abilities or the samples for their products? You sign the contract before you see actually the product from them, and you then give them the grace period to manufacture and produce. What if their product it's not qualified for your company? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So you're absolutely right. We take risk in Qatar Shell, and that risk is huge because we sign with someone who doesn't have an actual product, and we haven't seen it. We haven't seen the quality of the product. So what we do is we sign with the SME on good faith. He will comply with the technical specifications and the technical requirements. So let's say if I ask for half a liter bottle of water, then he needs to provide half a liter bottle of water, not for 400 millimeter or 1 liter. If it needs to be in X color or X shape, it has to be the same. Now, I haven't seen the product before I sign the contract. It is correct. But I give him the 18-month grace period to go and build that product for us. And if that product is up to the spec that we have signed together on agreed, then we will buy from him. Now, what happens if it doesn't fit or it doesn't comply? Then that's a different discussion, but usually the option for it is termination, because we have taken the risk to help an SME providing us with a product, and then it fails. We need to start all over again. But that doesn't stop us from continuing the journey. I hope I answer your question. I think I consumed my time, so thank you very much for your patience and listening. Wish you all success.
شكرا سيد عمرو. ومعنا الآن كلمة رئيسية حول الريادة الابتكارية والشراكات بين القطاعين العام والخاص، يتلوها علينا الدكتور روي بروسما، أستاذ في كلية الاقتصاد في جامعة ماستريخت في هولندا. تفضل أستاذ.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here, to be speaking here to you today about Maastricht University, a little bit about myself, and mainly what we do at Maastricht University and in the province of Limburg around the topic of entrepreneurship. So, let's see, next. Yes. So, a very short introduction. This is me. My name is Roy Broersma. I'm working for Maastricht University. I'm a researcher there, but also an educator. And my specializations are entrepreneurship, SME management, and innovation. So what we look at is basically the connection between the ability of SMEs, the ability of new startups, and their ability to innovate. So, and that's from a research perspective. Just a quick clarification. The Netherlands, if we look at the Netherlands, the province of Limburg, or the very south of the Netherlands, that's where I'm from. That's also where Maastricht University is located. And we have a very specific problem. We have a lot of problems, but there is one entrepreneurship-related problem we have in this region. And that's, if we compare it, especially to the rest of the Netherlands, we have a very little entrepreneurial ambition. I think there was a study in 2008 which asked all students, all university students in Holland, to what extent they were likely to start their own firm within 5 years of graduation. And then the result was that about 45% had the ambition to start their firm after 5 years of graduation. When you look at the results for Maastricht, or in general the south of the Netherlands, the very south of the Netherlands, that was only 25%. So there is quite a big of a gap between what we want. We want Limburg to be a very economically driven region, and what students can actually offer, or what students have the ambition to offer. So we started thinking, and we not only started thinking at Maastricht University, but also on a, let's say, on a government level, to what we can do to actually foster the entrepreneurial ambition, to foster the entrepreneurial spirit in our region. And when you look at that, we actually take if you place Maastricht University in the center, we actually take a 3-step approach. So in the center, in the white, there is Maastricht University. And Maastricht University, since about 2008, has set up their own master program in entrepreneurship and SME management. And I will talk about that in a second. Then you have the blue circle, the triple helix. And the triple helix is what we kind of see as kind of the holy grail between the cooperation, between government, between the private sector and knowledge institutions like university. But there was actually a step missing. This orange circle was missing. Because what we saw a lot of the times was that students who came out of the master program actually missed a step, missed maybe a little bit even the maturity in their business ID, in their business development, to actually be able to get into that triple helix, to get into that campus kind of situation. And I will explain that a little bit. And I'm very proud to announce today, and this is a kind of a preview, because the official launch is tomorrow in Maastricht. We have set up at Maastricht University our own incubator, which is called Loungebase, and tomorrow it will be presented, I think nationally and maybe even a little bit internationally to the world, but you here in Qatar have today a very small sneak preview. So I will talk about these 3 things. I will talk about what we do at Maastricht University, I will talk about what we do in Loungebase, and I will talk about what we do, let's say, on a province level, on a governmental level, to foster entrepreneurship in our region. So, Maastricht University, a combination of it's a Master of International Business, and then you can choose a specialization of Entrepreneurship and SME Management. And what sets this master actually apart from from other masters is that it's actually a combination of practice and academia. Obviously, to get a master's title, there needs to be some hint of academia also there, but we have a very intensive practical track within our master to help students set up their own business. So, to make it a little bit more practical, students will be involved in a year-long program which actually helps them set up their own business. In teams of 4 or 5 people, they have to set up a real-life venture with very differing results we see over the 7 years, but I will give you some examples in a second. Why we do that? It's not about creating the hot new company. It's not about creating the new Apple or Facebook within our master program. No, it's about teaching our students some kind of entrepreneurial mindset. It's about teaching students that, for example, that failure is okay. That when at the end, when you do a business plan or when you engage in kind of an entrepreneurial endeavor and you find out, okay, it doesn't work. Well, okay, it doesn't work, but hopefully you have learned. Hopefully you have learned a lot about the things you shouldn't do when you actually start doing it in real life. And we use what's called an effectuation approach. And an effectuation approach is a little bit different than the traditional approach of writing a business plan and going to the bank and getting money. Because that assumes that there's some kind of ideal situation and to reach that ideal situation you need money. What we do is actually we challenge the students not to go out and look for resources, but to consider what resources do I already have? What resources do I have in my network? What resources do I have as a person? And how can I use those resources to actually start my own business? A very simple example, when you do your home cooking, you can either do two things. You can set up a recipe, then go to the store, buy all the ingredients and cook your meal. I'm sorry. But you also can do it the other way around. You can also look in your fridge. You can also look and see what ingredients you have and see what you can make with that. And that second example is a little bit more the effectuation approach. And that's what we use to teach our students a style of entrepreneurship, basically. Some examples which come out of this master. I have a lot more, but you can find me in the break if you want to know a little bit more of the stories. But for example, we have Nerdealize. Nerdealize is a company that actually does the same for like these huge server farms, and it does the same, but it internalizes them in people's homes. So it does basically the same as the PC revolution. So a PC on every desktop. Now you have a server in every basement, basically. And those servers combined, they actually are able to foster the information capacity required, but also do because these server farms they give off a lot of heat and all these kind of things, and they use the energy coming off of these servers to actually also power the house. Second one is Maastricht Instruments, and that's a little bit of a sidetrack we have in our program, and it's a little bit comparable to what people are doing at Shell. So we have a lot of patents lying around at Maastricht University. A lot of especially from the health department, we have a very big health department, very active research department at Maastricht University concerning healthcare. But there's a lot of patents, there's a lot of applications which are only considered theoretically. So there's a lot of research being done with a lot of theoretical applications, and maybe the researchers themselves, they lack the capabilities, they lack the capacity to actually transfer this theoretical knowledge into practically applicable knowledge in a kind of a for-profit setting. And that's why Maastricht University has created Maastricht Instruments, which actually links these theoretical inventions to students, who then are able to use that innovation and try to see whether this innovation could work in a kind of a for-profit setting. So they actually are challenged to create a business plan or to create a go-to-market strategy for these kind of inventions. Okay. So that's what we do at Maastricht University. A very short overview of what we do at Maastricht University. And the main aim is to get our students inspired, to choose a career as an entrepreneur. So like I said, Launchbase, the official launch of Launchbase will be tomorrow. Why we did set up this incubator, if I go one step back, if you look, for example, at this Nerdealize kind of hit a brick wall. So they, after the year within the program, they kind of hit the brick wall where they needed a lot more facilities, they needed a lot more support, which they couldn't get in the Maastricht area because they weren't really ready to go into market yet, but and they needed a lot more support, they needed a lot more money and finance and advice and all these kind of things which are usually involved with incubators. So they actually went to Delft to take part in an incubator there. And that's something obviously which is a little bit of a shame because we want to keep our students here. So what we did is set up Launchbase, and Launchbase is an initiative of the Maastricht Center for Entrepreneurship, and it's actually two programs in one. You have Launch and you have Base. And Base is a 6-month training of ambitious students. So that's either students coming from the master, which have not fully developed their business plan yet, or other ambitious students coming from all kinds of faculties within the Maastricht setting and who want to become entrepreneurs. So it's a 6-month program really helping students to set up their business plan, set up a go-to-market strategy. And then obviously the second part of the program, it's called Launch, and it's a 3-year program aimed at the new business development. So putting actually the things you have theoretically learned or theoretically aimed at, putting them into practice. So what do we do at Launchbase? It's not that dissimilar from any other incubator you might have seen in any other situation, but it's kind of the missing link we still the missing link we still had between the university program and, let's say, the acceptance in real life. So what we offer is physical space, networking, guidance and training, and sharing resources. But that's a fairly similar to that what other incubators do. Yes. So, like I said, we're trying to set up a whole entrepreneurial ecosystem within our province, and that's happening at university due to the master, but also due to Launchbase. But that also happens on a government level. And here is where these public-private relationships come into play. And that program is called Brightlands. And Brightlands is basically a system in which and there is a fourth coming, but 3 main areas of expertise are defined in which we think Limburg should play a leading role in the world. And these 3 areas of expertise are basically clustered around a geographical location. So you have, and I will show you that in a second, how these geographical locations look like and why exactly they are there. So some figures about Brightlands. And remember, it's a fairly new program. It's I think the opening of the most recent campus has been only last year. So it's a fairly recent program which we're doing in total for about 5 years. So we have 8,000 people working, 86 companies, 110 nationalities, and 4,250 people studying. And so that doesn't seem like a lot, but for the province I'm from, the situation, also the demographical situation we are in, that's actually a huge contribution to what we're doing. And this is still at the very beginning, so we're hoping to get a lot of spin-off out of this. So how does it look in practice? You have 3, like I said, you have 3 campuses. There is a health campus, there is a food campus, and there's a materials campus. The health campus is situated at Maastricht University. Like I said, we have a very big health care education system in Maastricht. There's the faculty of medicine is very big, and there's a lot of research going on. So it's only natural that the health campus is situated there. For example, maybe a small example of a company situated there. It's called Siloc Medical, and Siloc is the first company in the world which are able to make cranial implants, which they put in your skull basically, in a 3D printing way. So they 3D print basically a new skull for you. Don't ask me how it works. I don't know. I'm not an expert on that, but that's what they do. Then you have the materials campus. The materials campus is located in Sittard, at the SABIC. There's a huge chemical compound, SABIC and DSM, and they work together on this materials campus, and that focuses mainly on the creation of new materials, a lot of renewable materials, plastics, all these kind of things. And then there's and that's the fairly new one. That's the food campus, and the food campus is located in Venlo. Maybe a little bit of a history. At the top of Limburg, there's a lot of agriculture. There's a lot of both in meats and in plantations. But and what they're doing in Venlo is looking at new ways of food, genetic manipulation of food. They're also looking at the logistics of food transport. So there's a huge amount of buzzing going on in the area. And the thing is that although we're still in our infancy. This program is still in its infancy. What so far is the biggest contribution of the program is that it has given us something to work toward. I had a conversation with one of the top guys at the province lately, and he said, well, if even nothing comes out of this, we at least are playing the same match now for a couple of years. So everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows that these are the spearheads, the spear points of what we actually are doing. And everybody knows that these 3 campuses, and there is actually 4 coming, that these 3 or 4 campuses are actually basically the lifeline we have as a province to also develop ourselves economically. So, like I said, even if nothing comes out of this, the connectedness we have gained from this program, the connectedness we have gained also between this triple helix, like I said. So the first time, it's actually the first time, I think, in a very long time that the private sector, the public sector, and knowledge institutions like, for example, Maastricht University are actually working together to create something which can give a huge boost to our region. And I think that's something which is very much to be admired and it has been very difficult to actually get. So in short, this is my presentation. I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you. I was so glad to know that you were coming from the Netherlands, because always I use the Netherlands as an example in comparing the digital content online in Dutch language and in Arabic language. As latest research showed that although Dutch is spoken by around 25 million people globally, while Arabic is spoken by around 500 million people between first or second language, but the digital online content in Dutch language is more than in Arabic. And this highlights basically because in the initiative now that you have shown through Maastricht, most of the content in Dutch language is co-created by the Dutch-speaking people. And I believe entrepreneurship, especially social entrepreneurship, you need to have that approach in co-creating the service with the audience or with the customer that you are trying to serve them. We are living on a daily basis. Actually, social entrepreneurship is more close to our life more than what we expect. Wikipedia, the biggest encyclopedia globally, is a 5 employees company, while if they have the biggest encyclopedia globally, bigger 7 times than Britannica. So that approach in social entrepreneurship, where if you think on how to co-create the service with your customers, this is very effective, and this will minimize the demand on financials or on money to launch your entrepreneurial venture. For example, I can always give example for an Arabic cooking website called Shahiyya.com. It's a Lebanese-based website. It was launched by a Lebanese social entrepreneur. She's a health specialist in health issues. So she launched this website. In short time, it became #1 cooking website in the Arabic world. Most of the content is co-created by its community. And we were surprised that, and then a Japanese global cooking website stepped in and bought this website for $50 million. So this is an example of how you can launch a venture where you can co-create it with your customers, and it will have value, and money is overestimated when it comes to launching social entrepreneurial ventures. So Netherlands is a good example when it comes to social entrepreneurship and the culture that incubates that.
You're 100% right, and I couldn't agree more. Like I said, the main change with this Brightlands program, but also what you see, not only in Brightlands, but in the whole, let's say, SME community in general, is that the fear of working together is slowly dissipating, because people realize that the only way to survive is actually to work together. And in that sense, that co-creation is a perfect example of what people should be doing. And I mean, that's kind of a little bit also my pet project, to get people to connect basically to each other, and to be able to co-create or work together on whatever kind of projects they have, and learn from each other. I think that's the most important thing. Thank you. Then I would like to thank you again for your attention, and if you have any questions, I will be around all day. So thank you.
كلمة أخرى عن تمكين ريادة الأعمال في كلية شمال الأطلنطي في قطر. دعونا نستقبل ممثل الجامعة في هذا الخصوص السيد روبرت مادرونيك، وهو أستاذ محاضر في تسويق وإدارة الأعمال. تفضل.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I think there's been a snafu with my PowerPoint presentation, so I'm just going to try to wing it, something I'm fairly skilled at. Essentially, what I'm here to talk to you about is some research I'm doing at the College of the North Atlantic, Qatar, CNAQ, where we are trying to create more entrepreneurs, more young entrepreneurs. And the reason why this is something that I'm involved in is because when I was a young undergraduate many years ago, I actually started my own business as a student. And the specific challenges that I faced while doing that, and recognizing that it did take a little bit of work and maybe a little bit of luck to get through them, is something that I want to help my students to get through. And if I can sort of create a visual for you of what it's like to be a young person trying to start a business back in Canada, it's sort of like you're standing in front of a huge wall. So if you can take a look at this big white wall, that's what it's like. And in order for me to start my business, that wall represents all of the challenges that I have to get through to successfully start my business. So when I'm looking at that wall, look how big that is. I'm a pretty big guy, right? I weigh about 150 pounds. So compared to this wall, you know, I look pretty small. And when I'm standing at the bottom of it and I'm thinking, I have to go through all of this to have a successful business, it's very easy to quit. It's very easy to be deterred. And for most students, this wall can be thought of as being a mix of a bunch of different things. There could be political issues, economic issues, social issues, say it with me, technological issues, legal issues, environmental issues, no? Okay. And the idea is, unfortunately, at the College of the North Atlantic, we can't do much about that. That's really more the responsibility of the government. What we can do at the College of the North Atlantic is teach our students how to adapt to the wall that they face when they want to start their business. And that's basically what we try to do. No PowerPoint yet? And so what I am doing with my research is starting off with what we call the theory of planned behavior. And I had a really nice graphic here, but try to imagine, basically the theory of planned behavior states that if we can increase an attitude towards a behavior, such as entrepreneurship, we can increase the intention to actually do that behavior. And if we can increase the intention to do that behavior, then the person is much more likely to actually engage in that behavior. And so my specific research is in the area of attitudes. And what I want to do is sort of improve or maximize my students' attitudes towards starting a business. So when they look at this big wall that they have to face, that they have to try to get over to start their business, it doesn't seem quite as daunting as it otherwise might. So one of the ways we measure attitudes is by using a system developed by Rosemary Athyde at Kingston University, and it's called the Attitudes Towards Entrepreneurship. And it's basically a constellation of different attitudes that combine together to create what we call the potential for entrepreneurship. The first attitude is problem solving. I had to write them down just in case. Creativity, risk taking, leadership, achievement, and personal control. So in her research, she's found that these 6 attitudes can combine and create better entrepreneurs. Now, you may have noticed that nowhere in there do I say anything about business, right? Nowhere in there do I say anything about marketing, and thankfully, I don't say anything about accounting. And this is something that we touched on a little bit this morning, where there was a couple of comments about maybe you can't teach entrepreneurship. I'm not sure I want to agree with that and talk myself out of a job, but I can at least say that you can teach the methods of entrepreneurship. But getting back to our constellation of attitudes, the idea is we want to measure these attitudes to figure out where our students are and then come up with ways to increase those attitudes. And that's essentially what I did. I had a project, the initial one, which was a cross-sectional analysis. I handed out surveys to 450 students at the college, and what I found out was, surprisingly, there are actually some pretty strong attitudes towards entrepreneurship at the College of the North Atlantic. I looked at specific subgroups just to kind of get a feel for where the changes and differences are that I could address with further research. So one of the first groups I looked at is gender, males versus females. Now, who wants to guess, males or females, who has higher attitudes towards entrepreneurship? It's actually females, surprisingly. And so this is one of those things where I looked at that and I would say to myself, well, you know, why is that? Maybe that's an area where I can look at for the second part of my research project. Why is it that females have this stronger attitude? Now, I'm not saying everywhere in the world, I'm not saying in Qatar, I'm just saying at the College of the North Atlantic. Now, the second group I looked at them by age. 16 and 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and then 23 and older. And not surprisingly, what I found out was that the average entrepreneurial attitude increased with age. Now, that's something that we could have all guessed, right? You go to school, you spend time there, you're learning to adapt to all of the walls that exist in school, whether it's adapting to you know, Mr. Peter says we have to write a 2,000-word essay. Mr. Robert yells at us if we show up late for class. All of those sorts of things. And so the students learn how to adapt to those sorts of walls. At the same time, hopefully, they're maturing as well. The next thing I looked at, which was a really interesting one, was number of activities that the students participate in. So instead of looking at specific activities, I asked them to tell me, how many activities did you participate in the last year? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And again, not surprisingly, what I found was the students with the lowest entrepreneurial potential, the lowest entrepreneurial attitudes, didn't participate at all. They were students who didn't seem to have a lot of motivation to do anything other than going to school. 1 activity, a little bit higher. 2 activities, a little bit higher, and so on up till 4 and more activities. These are the students that we tend to see at all of the case competitions, the business planning competitions. These are the superstars at CNAQ, and these are the people that you'll see one day up here on one of these panels, because I have no doubt that they will be successful as well. Now, the next thing we looked at is postgraduate intentions, and what that means is, what are you going to do after you graduate from CNAQ? And there's a variety of answers that I'm not going to worry too much about right now, but there were a couple specific things that really stood out. First and foremost, how many of those students out of 450 said that their intention was to start a business? 11. Only 11 said that they were going to start a business, whereas close to half said that they wanted to work for the government. And this, of course, is something that if you read the newspaper or magazines, you see that's really the number one choice for a lot of young people in the state of Qatar. And what's even more disappointing is that the students who choose to work for government actually score, on average, very high in entrepreneurial potential. Now, whether you view that as a loss of potential entrepreneurs, or an advantage that a lot of entrepreneurial students are going to work for the government, that's really up to you. But the reality is, not everyone can work for the government. We do want more of these people to start businesses in Qatar. The other thing that we looked at when we looked at intention was something in the area of 30% said they wanted to go on to further education. And this is something specifically, if we're coming up with strategies at CNAQ, helps us, because we have a lot of agreements with other colleges and universities that enable our students to transfer their credits. And so this is something, at the very least, from a customer service perspective, is good for us. But what it really shows is that although, on average, our students do have fairly high entrepreneurial potential, they don't transfer that into starting businesses. Why? I can't say, but it's what got me thinking about the second part of my research project. And then finally, what I did was compare entrepreneurial potential across programs. So again, I'm going to beat up on my business faculty folks again. I assumed that the School of Business would have the highest entrepreneurial potential, but it didn't. In actual fact, IT and I believe engineering scored a little bit higher. So again, that's sort of an area where you would think, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We actually teach entrepreneurship. These are people who have actually taken courses in entrepreneurship, but the people who are learning how to fix hardware and software are more entrepreneurial. Why is that? And that led me to the second part of my project, which I'm not going to present here because it's almost lunchtime and I don't want to scare anyone, but this is sort of the driver for the second half of my project. So just a quick overview, what my project looks at is the entrepreneurial potential of students at the beginning of actual entrepreneurship courses, and there were 5 during the period, and then I measured their entrepreneurial potential at the end of that course to find out how many differences there were, how big was the difference, who had the biggest difference. Now, in general, let me ask you, do you think entrepreneurial potential increased, decreased, or stayed the same? Anyone? Well, I'm not going to tell you because I want to get invited back next year, so I'll talk about it then. So as far as I know, I think we're just about ready for lunch, so I'm about to give you the best piece of advice that you're going to hear all day. I heard a rumor that there might be chocolate cake, and if you know Mr. Peter Moore, do not get between Peter Moore and the chocolate cake. I almost lost a finger last time. Thank you, folks. Have a great afternoon.
حضورنا الكريم، سوف ننتقل إلى استراحة الغداء لنواصل برنامجنا عند تمام 3:15. شكراً.